Welcome, friends. I hope you are doing good. So, in this particular series, I'm going to start on Zero Trust architecture or introduction to Zero Trust framework or a model. I have recently got this certification from Cloud Security Alliance on pursuing a course on Zero Trust architecture. This course usually costs around $99. If I just go to this Cloud Security Alliance Knowledge Center, they offer different types of trainings across CCSK and Certified Cloud Security Knowledge, and there are all courses like Micro Kubernetes and DevSecOps, etc. And Zero Trust is the one which I have taken recently, but I haven't paid the cost of $99 which it usually costs because I have got it for free because of the seminars or webinars I have attended here for FinCloud Security Summit, right? So it was complimentary for me. But I have leveraged the knowledge around these constructs, like what is the introduction of zero trust architecture, introduction to zero trust architecture, definition and concepts and components of ZT, the objectives of ZT, benefits of ZT, planning consideration, ZT implementation example, etc. And I have churned them in. I'm going to churn the knowledge which I've got in this very course, and we'll also scale this knowledge to understand how Azure as a cloud security service provider is leveraging zero trust and what are the controls it has to actually implement zero trust at the very ground level. So that is the part. So we'll try to if you understand this course well, it will help you to implement zero trust in your scenarios, right, across multiple phases which it is having. So let's just start with the basic introductory idea of zero trust. So I've just created some documentation around it. So let's start with it. Now, first we need to understand what led to ZT. ZT I'm using as an abbreviation here, so maybe you can just use trust here, zero trust, and how it got evolved. So basically, organizations are not stagnant, okay? They keep on experimenting and they keep on growing. And organization always adopt new technologies by leveraging cloud services, leading to more cyber risk exposure. So when they go to cloud service, because it's a multi-tenant environment, cloud is a multi-tenant environment, correct? So there are chances or there's an increased risk of cyber exposure, and hence we need some certain technology enablement or enhancement in the cyber security side as well, which is this newer concept referred to as zero trust, okay? Shifting to technology landscape such as edge, IoT, cloud has resulted in more complexity. So when we move to this edge, IoT, cloud, and other emerging trends, it always results out in more complexity. More complexity leads to more risk averseness, and hence we need to protect ourselves against it. So hence this concept is there in the picture, or the why it got evolved, right? That is the thing. Now the shift is sometimes engaging both on premises and cloud. So we know that we have hybrid environments across cloud or from on premises with and cloud. So these are the scenarios, and things can be more complex when we think of protecting them against threats. Now, the need to safeguard our network and data permanent is ever required. So, basically, at the core, we will be protecting data only because data is of essence. We as an organization work for data, and the adversaries are also looking for that critical data only because with that they can harness multitude of things. So, hence, we need to safeguard. We need to ensure that we are safeguarding our networks and the data because they both are very important. Now, zero trust is a model that creates a virtual enclave, kind of a partition, and grant access to resources into that enclave according to the never trust, always verify concepts, right? So basically, in zero trust, we create some enclaves, partitions, or uh, segregation, and based on the access or based and we grant access to the resources which are part of that enclave, okay? So we first create enclave and we have resources in that enclaves and we grant access to those resources within enclave based on the permissions which are assigned to the right with whatever permissions which are assigned to the entity where they will get access to the resources within the enclave. So that's what consists, but at the core it is always like we should never trust, we should always verify. Okay, so we have resources here in the enclave, and we are not going to grant every entity access to those resources until we trust them or until we verify them. I mean, we are not trusting them by default, we are always verifying their identity, okay, to grant access to the resources which are part of that enclave. So I hope this is statement is quite clear to you, right? Now, zero trust model, zero trust security model, zero trust approach, zero trust architecture, and zero trust all refers to different aspects of the same concept. Basically, zero trust is the same concept, but we are using different terminologies to identify it in different contexts, right? So let's try to understand what is the history of zero trust. Zero trust research, and by Department of Defense, which is also referred to as DoD, and other forums. This is the pre 2010 time when the Department of Defense started all this zero trust researching and concepts. But in 2010 at Forrester, zero trust was first coined by John Kinderwag. I have this link handy with me. I can show you. This person is John Kinderwag. At the beginning of 2022, Zero Trust faces a bizarre dichotomy. It's on the verge of becoming the de facto cybersecurity approach while simultaneously having many security practitioners decry it as just a marketing ploy, which it was not. How did we as the security community arrive such a precarious perch? Okay, he is John Kinderwag, by the way. He is not the one. He is some. I think both are same, right? Okay, he is the first person for the zero trust conceptualization. Okay, in 2010 at Forrester. Now, software defined parameter SDP by Cloud Security Alliance was in context in 2013. Okay, and we just did the certification from Cloud Security Alliance only. It's a very good, prestigious organization. And in 2014, Google implemented ZT and Beyond Corp. Zero Trust and Beyond Corp is implemented by who implemented it first, right? Till this SGP and all those concepts, it's just a concepts and theory around, but the actual implementation is done by Google in 2014. Forrester's Zero Trust Extended Ecosystem Report in 2018, and in 2020 NIST Special SP Publication 80 Zero Trust. So you can also check this out. So this is the National Institute of Standards and Technology report around Zero Trust. Okay, this is a publication. To my, I mean, these are the standards which are specified in this report. Later, other cloud service providers draw the insights from this particular report or publication, and they actually do the implementation part like that. Okay. So here's an abstract of this publication. Zero trust is the term for an evolving set of cybersecurity paradigms that move defense from static network perimeter to focus on users, assets, and resources. A zero trust architecture uses zero trust principle to plan industrial and enterprise infrastructure and workflows. Zero trust assumes there is no implicit trust granted to assets or user account based solely on their physical or network location, or based on asset ownership. Authentication and authorization are discrete functions performed before a session to an enterprise resource is established. Zero trust is a response to enterprise network trends that include remote users, bring your own device, and zero trust focuses on protecting resources, asset services, workflow network, not network segments, as the network location is no longer seen as prime component in the security posture of the resource. This document contains an abstract definition of Zero trust gives general deployment model and uses use cases where zero trust could improve an enterprise overall information technology security. Okay, so that's the idea on that thing. Now let's try to build some understanding on the definition, concepts, and components of zero trust. Okay, so zero trust concept, if we see, principal practices designed for reducing cyber risk in today's dynamic IT environment. Basically, whatever risk we are seeing keep on emerging with the emergence of the technology should be addressed, and zero trust play a vital role in that. Zero trust requires strict authentication verification for each person device services, whether inside or outside. Okay, it doesn't matter whether the user is inside or outside or external or internal. It is verify everyone, okay, and trust no one. Like and do not trust until you verify. So it is applicable to all the entities involved, whether internal to network or external to network, like that. And zero trust posture is based on authentication control and risk based analytics. Key concept in zero trust is that authentication and authorization must occur prior to resource being granted. So we know there are two terms which are very prominently being shown here. One is authentication and another one is authorization. So we need to understand what does they mean. So basically, authentication, as the name indicates, it's the very prima facie thing that happens. When a user comes inside, he will be checked whether his username and password are in sync or not. If they are not, they will get deauthorized and an error will be posed to them that you are not a authorized user. Maybe your password or username is not correct. Okay, like that. And authentication is something that, or authorization is something that ensures that once the user is authenticated, what he can do or perform within the network. I mean, what rights does that particular entity hold, what he can do. So these two are very important because eventually in zero trust, what we are doing is we are creating multiple enclaves. We have resources in those enclaves, and we grant access to entities to those resources which are their part of the enclaves. Correct. So first we need to do the authentication to check whether he is a legitimate user or not. Post to that, we need to identify if he is a legitimate user, what are his rights, what are his roles, what he can do. So that all is governed with this authorization. Okay. Now, key concept in Z is that authentication and authorization must occur prior to the resource access has been granted. So that is the prima facie in the ZT concept. Also in zero trust, there is no assumption making about the trustworthiness of an entity as it requests to a resource. So basically, we are not making any assumptions on the trustworthiness of the entity who is trying to access the resource, right? We are just verifying his identity whether the credential which he is having are there with us as well only in the identity provider we have. Okay. Now starting with no pre-established entitlement, then relying on a construct which is used to add entitlements, right? Assuming breach and verifying all workforce device workloads, networks, and data access, regardless of where, who, or what resource. So basically, here it is saying like we need to verify everything, and we need to go with the concept that we are already in a breach state. Okay, we need to be always in that state, like we are already breached, and we need to be doing zero trust implementation or conceptualization in that way only. Hmm. Now we need to understand what is a tenet. So tenet is nothing but basically a principle that generally holds true is referred to as a tenet. Okay, and the Department of Defense or DoD has identified five tenets for our Zero trust. Now assume a hostile environment. Malicious actors are inside and outside network. As I told, like we just need to ensure that we are in a breach state only. So we are considering the hostile environment as well. That whole environment where we are is full of malicious actors inside and outside of the network. All user device network environment are untrusted. Now this is a hypothetical condition, and we should, if we are ensuring this format, then we are very proactive from the cyber security aspect within an environment. Then we need to ensure that we are assuming we are in a breach condition. Now creating, managing, defend resource as if adversaries are already inside the network. So we need to ensure that we need to consider the scenario where when adversaries have already breached our environment, they are already inside our network. Okay, and access and authorization decision should be scrutinized more closely. So if we do this, then what we'll do if a foreign entity is inside our network which who is not authorized, so what we'll do, we'll scrutinize our access policies, we'll scrutinize our authentication and authorizations aspects, correct? We'll closely monitor the identities who are part of the current network. Yeah. So then the concept that comes, or the tenet that comes next, is never trust, always verify. That piece, I'm denying the access by default. Nobody is authorized to have access by default, right? That is the key here. And we always follow the principle of least privilege, which means we try to grant access to an identity or an entity as least as possible. We will not grant complete access to the identity. Considering the fact that he is from this domain, he should be having all access to this particular resource. No. If he wants read access, we'll grant read access. If he wants write access, we'll grant only write access. Only read only like that. So read and write, there is a separate permission base. Or we can also go for creating a custom role for that particular identity like that. So that's the principle of least privileges. Then scrutinize explicitly, like all resources should be continuously accessed based on context. There should be some context, right? Um, like in Azure, we have privilege identity management, where a privilege identity requests access to a particular resource or a role, so as to become so as to access the resource eventually. But while getting access to that resource, the identity should have specific number of hours. Along with, he need to give some reasoning as well, like why exactly he needs this role. So this is how things are more in sync. Now access is conditional and subject to change. It's not permanent, right? So like that. Apply unified analytics and behavioristics to data. What data, and and we need to log everything. What changes have been made, who logged in, who accessed what, and all those things we need to log. So SIM solutions plays an important role in here. Eventually, these are all the principles, right? And at the end, whoever is implementing these principles need to have some executioning application for it, right? So that's the key, converting principles into the execution unit. Now let's understand design principle in zero trust authentic zero trust architecture. Yeah, ZTA stands for zero trust architecture, and ZT stands for zero trust. Okay, but eventually they are all pointing to the same concept, which is zero trust, as per NIST and all those things. So these are the principles. We need to deny access until the requester has thoroughly been authenticated. Okay, until the user get authenticated, we don't need to grant any access. Allowing access to the network differs, as a requester are not allowed access to access without authentication. Allowing access to the network differs, as requesters are not allowed access without authentication. Yes, allowing access to resource only after the requesting entity has been authorized. So it is consistently pointing to important thing: authorization, authentication, and authorization that rest with the network, because within network we have subnet and all resources are part of that one. Now, allowing access to resources only after the requesting entities has been authorized. Now enforcing the least privilege principle of least privilege, as I told, specifically the least amount of necessary access granted. Now requiring continuous monitoring and control, implementing and effectiveness. So this is the monitoring part. So if you see, we have three key things in the discussions we have in the last few minutes. Like, we need to ensure that we should never trust and we always verify. And why we need this context? Because of the ever emerging organizations in the technology stack they use, which make them more risk averse, which we need to cater to. And zero trust is helping us there. How it is helping out? Because of the principle and tenets which it is having in the construct. One is uh, authentication and authorization, from having principle of least privilege and continuous monitoring. So these are the key constructs around it. We'll try to understand it further. So stay tuned. Thank you.